Michelle Malkin is with us this morning, senior editor of Conservative Review. Hey, Michelle, great to see you.
You too.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just going to say they should have photoshopped the picture of her with her swilling with the beer mug. I love that one.
Right.
Exactly. She got a standing ovation on Broadway yesterday when she was in the audience. That's a big shocker.
What show did she go to?
I don't know. Might have been Cats.
Yeah, we loved it. It was better than Cats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Pence gets a lecture. She gets a standing ovation. All right. Let me ask you about this. You know, we know there's a mainstream media bias against generally conservatives. You've been talking about this for years. But the New York Times has compared President Trump to O.J. Simpson. They wrote this: the White House drama has begun to resemble a kind of O.J. Simpson trial for politics, gripping the nation and minting a menagerie of unlikely celebrities. What do you think? Is that fair?
It's obnoxious and it's offensive. I'll tell you what is fair and appropriate about it, though. I'm glad that these people are admitting that they are like circus clowns. I was in L.A. in the 1990s, and the idea that these people have finally woken up the sleeping beauties who were AWOL for the last 8 years, finally energized. I love in that New York Times article how they quoted David Remnick of The New Yorker, saying that he feels like a 29-year-old again, starting his career anew. Because, you know, there weren't enough scandals, blood-tainted scandals during the last 8 years of the Obama administration for them to cover and wake up to. Disgusting.
Right.
Well, they really didn't uncover any scandals. Was anybody really looking for scandals during the Obama years? I'm asking.
No, they weren't, which is why it was a full employment act for me over the last 8 years. Not only did Culture of Corruption come out within the first 7 months of the administration, but of course I could have written an entire encyclopedia series with all the columns that I did reporting on all of those scandals. And the whitewash that continues with these people pretending as if the Obama administration, even if in its first 100 days, wasn't a complete hot mess. I did a column this week comparing the first 100 days of the Obama administration with Trump. The idea that it is unprecedented chaos, what's happening now. Where were these people in the first 100 days of Obama when there were 4 withdrawals of Obama nominees based on everything from tax problems to national security problems? Obama had nominated a national intelligence head who was a Saudi-funded shill. Where were they? Where were they?
You had 2 major programs. You had the stimulus package where there were no shovel-ready projects, which you later admitted, and you had Obamacare. You can keep your doctor and you can keep your plan. You couldn't do either. There just was no interest in following up. The investigations to the IRS, you made that comment. I found out about news reports. I'm going to look into it. Nobody looked into it after that, and the Benghazi investigation and where it went was ended up being a witch hunt.
And you know what? The New York Times, which I call the fish wrap of record, was at the heart of this whitewash conspiracy. Steve Bannon is absolutely right. The media is the opposition party. I got to get that on a bumper sticker.
All right, Michelle, let's talk about immigration, because we had a report a few days ago showing the numbers and how many people that have been deported from our country in the last week were actually criminals. It was 75% of them. But if you watch the mainstream media, they're talking about ripping families apart. There is an immigration lawyer, his name is Robert Malkin, who said that President Trump has a heart when it comes to children. This is what he wrote in the Daily Mail. President Trump, in 2 weeks, has already done more for unaccompanied refugee children than Obama did in 2 years. Democrats who are horrified at Trump could allow President Obama to act in the most unlawful way out of any president I have seen in my lifetime. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, what Colgan is referring to is a memorandum that deprioritizes the immediate deportation of unaccompanied minors. And that certainly goes against the open borders narrative that somehow Trump is this so-called fascist who's doing everything he can to rip apart families, et cetera, et cetera. And the open borders lobby, of course, has been focusing on the deportation of a young man who is, according to ICE, a described gang member in Seattle. And this is to point fingers at all of the deportations that are now going on of so-called DACA dreamers. But it's interesting that even somebody within the immigration lawyers lobby is trying to defend President Trump. And I'm glad for that kind of fairness. You certainly don't get that in the open borders media.
He said children are being put in the back of the line to be scheduled for cases, and they're putting everybody else up there. Therefore, he's showing compassion for the kids and families. That's not going to get out there. I think later, after he secures the border and after he gets rid of the criminals, then we're going to deal with the people that are here and haven't violated any laws. We might sooner or later, little by little, get comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah, let me just make one more point, though, because you always hear this open borders platitude about ripping families apart. And the bottom line fundamental question there, though, is whose responsibility is it for the families being ripped apart? There are parents who are making this conscious decision on the other side of the border, either to send their kids over here and have us take care of them, or for them to come here illegally, then have those children. Who bears the burden of that? American taxpayers and the government, or those parents themselves who put their own children at risk?
Sure. Great point. Also, we've been talking a lot about refugees, given the fact that many from 7 different nations, as well, immigrants, you know, under the temporary travel ban, not allowed in the country. Now they are again. But when it comes to refugees, apparently there's a story out there that, according to the United Nations, refugees can easily spend 1/3 of their disposable income on staying connected. They want more free stuff. They want Wi-Fi. They want connectivity, stuff like that, so that they can. They're refugees, but they gotta update their Facebook page.
That's right. Give me you're poor, you're tired, you're yearning for a free Wi-Fi connection. And this is happening all over Europe, of course, and it is no joke, the billions of dollars that are now being spent on welfare in places like Sweden and Germany. And, oh, poor Angela Merkel finally realizing, oops, shouldn't have done this, should have taken care of our own people first. And it's not just happening in Europe. Of course, it's happening on our own shores, where refugees, when they come here, have super high rates of food stamp usage, and the problems that are inherent in refugees who are exploiting their so-called political and economic persecution status. You've got refugees from Somalia who are in Europe who are using their welfare cash to go back to their home countries that they claimed were persecuting them. This is insanity.
Right. So when do we see your next investigative piece?
I've got 9 shows coming up on crtv.com. In fact, one of them is on the refugee crisis and a very unfortunate phenomenon that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and that is the rape refugee crisis that's going on in Europe.
All right, and before you go, what do you make of what's going on with the feeding frenzy right now in Washington, D.C.? Started with the stuff, you know, the investigation into the Russian hack, which didn't happen. You know, they didn't impact the election, according to the FBI, supposedly. And now the Flynn fallout and the leakers and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of squirrels, you know, squirrels that are distracting us from things that are really important. And with regard to leaks and national security, why aren't more people talking about the 3 Muslim brothers in the House Intelligence Democratic Committee who were involved, who were involved in all sorts of undermining of national security? Don't want to talk about that.
Excellent point. We'll try to cover it real soon.
Thank you, Michelle. Michelle Malkin.
Thank you, ma'am.
You bet.